Good morning and welcome to the Dan Beasley Show, coming to you live from Hartsville, South Carolina. Time is 6:37 a.m. on July 29th, 2013. I hope you made it through the weekend okay. Hope you and yours are safe, and I hope you have a good travel into work today, and I hope that you are fortunate enough to have a job today, because in the news today we have um, economic news that is very discouraging for a lot of people. And today we're going to be covering how many people are in poverty in this United States of America. As you know, the United States used to be a job dynamo. It used to be creating jobs, not about losing jobs. However, we find ourselves in the unenviable position of having little jobs. And when we turn from a manufacturing economy into a service economy, all of our jobs went overseas to other countries, such as China and India and Pakistan, and also down to Mexico and other places. So our exclusive today is coming to us through Yahoo, and it's an exclusive story. It says 4 in 5, and it's reported by the AP Press, by the way, by Hopi and Associated Press. 4 in 5 people, adults, working adults in the United States face near poverty or no work at all. And it says working class whites are gloomy about the future and rising income gaps and racial shifts. And coming out of Washington, it says 4 out of 5 U.S. American adults struggle with joblessness, near poverty, on reliance on welfare for at least parts of their lives, a sign of a deteriorating economic security and an elusive American dream. Survey data exclusive to the Associated Press point to an increasingly globalized U.S. economy, the widening gap between the rich and the poor, and the loss of good-paying manufacturing jobs as the reasons for the trend. The findings come as President Barack Obama tries to renew his administration's emphasis on the economy, saying in recent speeches that its highest priority is to rebuild the ladders of opportunity and reverse income inequality. As non-whites approach a numerical majority in the United States, one question is how public programs to lift the disadvantage should be best focused on the affirmative action that has historically tried to eliminate the racial barriers seen as a major impediment to economic equality, or simply on improving socioeconomic status for all, regardless of race. Hardship is particularly growing among whites based on several measures. Pessimism among that racial group about their families' economic futures have climbed to the highest point since at least 1987. And the most recent AP GFK poll, 63% of whites are calling the economy poor. And some are saying that they're thinking it's going to get worse, especially in the coal areas of Appalachia. So anyway, we have that going on. We also have in the news today, coming from the Middle East, the Saudi Prince Al-Lead warns against falling oil demand. Saudi billionaire Prince Al-Lead bin Talal warned that the Gulf Arab Kingdom needed to reduce its reliance on crude oil and diversify its revenues, as rising U.S. shale energy supplies cut the global demand for its oil. An open letter to the oil minister and other ministers published on Sunday on his Twitter account, the prince said that demand for oil from OPEC member nations was in continuous decline. He said Saudi Arabia's heavy dependence on oil was a truth that has really become a source of worry for many, and that the world's biggest crude oil exporter should implement swift measures to diversify its economy. So we're becoming less dependent on Mideast oil. On the other front, energy front, it's been long thought that earthquakes and methane bubbles that bubble up from the ocean are linked, and the long suspected link between earthquakes and underwater methane bursts has finally been confirmed. Reports a study published today on July 28th in the journal Nature Geoscience. Though Tremler wasn't caught in the act, a strong shaking left clues in the methane-rich mud and sand offshore of Pakistan, where two of the Earth's tectonic plates collide at the Makran subduction zone. 1945, a magnitude 8.1 earthquake struck along the subduction zone, killing at least 300 people and triggering a tsunami. In other news today, we got the world's largest insurance company, Lloyd's of London, and they're warning the world of an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse. And they said that industry giant says that the extended outage could be measured in years, not in days, not in months, but in years. And it says that Lloyd's of London, the world's largest specialist insurance company, providing services to companies in over 200 countries, has issued a dire warning of potential consequences of an electromagnetic pulse event from a solar storm. And as you well know, a nuclear device exploding over a country could also trigger an EMP. And that has a lot of people concerned about North Korea's nuclear program, in addition to them receiving munitions from Cuba, in particular missiles and things of that nature. Lloyd's study, titled Solar Risk to the North American Electric Grid, centered on the highly populated region from New York City to Washington, D.C., but added that other high-risk regions are in the Midwest and on regions along the Gulf Coast. The fact that a major insurance company is looking at the economic consequences of an EMP from a direct solar storm suggests that there is increasing concern in the insurance industry that companies may be facing the danger of severe economic losses. As a major trendsetter in the insurance world, Lloyd's unusual warning about the effects of an EMP could have an impact on insurance company coverage. A severe space weather event that causes major disruption to the electric network in the United States could have major implications for the insurance industry, the Lloyd's study says. If businesses, public services, and households are without power for sustained periods of time, insurers may be exposed to business interruption and other claims. Coming from the world of nuclear power, the Fukushima plant that had melted down, plants that had melted down in northern Japan are going to be dumping radioactive water into the Pacific. And the contaminated water is building at the rate of an Olympic swimming pool each week. The March 11th, 2011 earthquake and the subsequent tsunami that devastated Tokyo's electric power company's Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant has left TEPCO struggling with a potential public relations disaster ever since. Since the onset of the incident, TEPCO has used massive sprays of water to cool down the damaged reactor complex. The debacle ignited concerns worldwide that the release of the environment of radioactive debris from the stricken nuclear facility, and a topic that both TEPCO and Japanese government worked to downplay. Relentlessly upbeat and optimistic information has been sparingly released by TEPCO ever since. But on July 25th, a Japanese newspaper, Asahi Shimbun, reported that the Japanese Nuclear Regulatory Authority Chairman Shunki Tanaka told journalists that Fukushima No. 1, the number one nuclear reactor plant, is filling up with water Inevitably, the contaminated water will have to be discharged into the sea after TEPCO processes it properly and lowers its radioactivity level below the standards. And coming out of our next article, as like on the economic front, you remember Detroit went bankrupt about a week and a half ago. Well, the question is being posed now, is Chicago next on the list? The Windy City's cash balance has plummeted to only $33 million as their debt has tripled. While everyone's attention was focused on the Detroit bankruptcy and just what assets the city will sell in lieu of raising a DIP plan, perhaps it is time to refocus the attention to the city's 300 miles west, which is Chicago, according to the Chicago Sun-Times, citing year-end audits. Obama's former right-hand man, Rahm Emanuel, is the mayor of Chicago. He closed the books on 2012 with a $33.4 million in unallocated cash on hand, down from $167 million the year before, while adding to the mountain of debt piled on the Chicago taxpayers. And in addition to a liquidity problem, Chicago may also be quite insolvent as a city during a long-term debt, which soared to nearly $29 billion. That's $10,780 for every one of the city's nearly 2.69 million residents. More than a decade ago, the debt load was only $9.6 billion, and that was $3,338 per resident. And of course, this has tripled since then. And it says, in a world in which debt is wealth, this is great news, at least until the debt becomes bankruptcy. So we have that going on in Chicago. Also, we have problems around the world, and including down in the southern hemisphere of the South American continent. We have thousands of anti-government protesters being tear gassed by Peru police. Riot police blocked the passage of thousands of anti-government protesters marching on Congress in Peru's capital, Lima. Officers used tear gas and water cannons on activists who slammed government corruption and called on the president for change. Clashes broke out between police and protesters as the crowd tried to push its way to Congress. Hooded youths pelted riot officers with stones, while some protesters burnt and trampled a coffin-shaped box with President Ollanta Humala's name on it. Lima Police Chief General Luis Praley said that 15 people were arrested during the unrest, and protesters alleged that President Humala has not implemented the changes he promised in the public sector 2 years after his election in 2011. Also in the news today, we have the driver of the derailed Spanish train. He has been charged with 79 counts of homicide and is pending trial on charges of reckless homicide. A judge ruled on Sunday night. Francisco Garzon, 52, has been under arrest since Thursday. He was suspected of driving the train too fast through a tight curve on the outskirts of the northwestern city of Santiago de Compostela. Examining Magistrate Luis Alez formally charged Gazan with 79 counts of homicide and numerous offenses of bodily harm, all of them committed through professional recklessness, the court said in a statement. In a closed-door hearing before Judge Alaz, Garzon admitted to taking the curve too fast, blaming it on a momentary lapse, according to media reports. And also in the news today, there are signs of declining economic security, and it's talking about how the gap between the rich and the poor is widening. Loss of good paying jobs is a reason for the trend. And of course, President Obama is going to be addressing that as his highest priority. We've already covered that in another story. And we'll be moving along to the next story, which says the Hot Shots. The Hot Shots were the team that was, well, the members were killed during the wildfire out in Arizona. The lone hot shot that survived, he served as a lookout for the others. And there were 19, there were 20 members of the hot shot crew. This was Brennan McDonough's 20, he was the 20th member, and he was 21 years old, and it was his third season with the Hot Shots from the Prescott-based Granite Mountain. And he was to be the heads up on the hillside, and he did exactly what he was supposed to do, according to Prescott, according to Wade Ward, Prescott Fire Department spokesperson. Ward stated that he did exactly what he was supposed to do. When the conditions changed as his team fought the mountain blaze, he notified the other hotshots that the weather was changing rapidly and told them the fire had switched direction because of the wind. I also told them he was leaving the area and to contact them on the radio if they needed anything. Ward received a standing ovation as he implored the media to please leave him alone. McDonough has no desire to speak to anyone at this point. He's still trying to deal with the same things that everyone else is trying to deal with. But you can understand how it is that it's being compounded there on the scene. So he has obviously been under scrutiny because of his involvement in being the lone survivor. I guess who is under threat from a hurricane? You may have guessed it. It's Hawaii. Hurricane Flossie is moving towards Hawaii. And right now it's a tropical storm, Flossie. But the storm is expected to weaken before it hits the island, so it may not become a hurricane. But anyway, the storm is expected to weaken before it hits the islands, and it will bring approximately 6 to 10 inches of rain and rough surf. And if you want more news on that, you could go to weather.com and pick up the news on that. And that concludes our news portion of the show for today. I'd like for you to really consider just how fragile your life is in light of all of these news stories. Some of these stories, with the fires and the earthquakes and the tropical storm and the political unrest and things every day, just everyday things. More people die from accidents than die from all the other diseases combined. And if you're a young person, probably between the ages of 1 and probably 40 or 45, you're more apt to die from an accident than you are from a disease. So, in other words, there is a 100% non-survivable rate in every generation of people. And there's no one that's going to escape that day that's appointed to each and every one of us. We have to pay our taxes. Death and taxes are the only two sure things in this world. And we have to be sure of one other thing, where or what is going to happen to us upon our departure from planet Earth. Where are we going to go? What's going to become of us? What is our future? Do we have a future? Are we just like machines that we just turn off and then we just turn back on later, or never, or we're just gone forever? Well, we have to look at it and we have to say to ourselves, what if? I mean, we see the brilliance and we see the intelligence and we see everything around us, and we just say, it took a lot of effort to get that here. It took intelligent design for everything that man made to put everything here. So why would we not consider the fact that something else beyond ourselves could not have made it on a much larger uh, stage, such as the creation of planets, the creation of the galaxies and the stars in the universe, and also that there was a maker and an intelligent designer behind it all. And if there was and is, then what would happen if we die and we had to meet him? What would be our response? What would be our response if he says, I gave you a life and you lived it, and what have you done with it? And I gave you my son, I gave my son's life in exchange for yours so that you could be with me, but yet you turned it down. So what am I supposed to do with you? What if that conversation took place? Well, we all know that, according to our Christian principles of which this country was built upon, which we have departed from, a lot of churches are packed every Sunday, but the culture seems to not be reflecting that. In the statistics, you see a lot of divorces in Christian homes as well as non-Christian homes. You see a lot of the culture creeping into the churches, and you see a lot of things that are happening. And a lot of people say, well, I don't go to church because they're no better than I am. I can't see any difference. Well, there is an important difference. And that difference is that no one can really live the Christian life on their own. What you're seeing is a person who is in a struggle. They're in a struggle because they made a decision, and they made a decision because they were concerned about their security, eternal security, and they wanted to get into heaven when they die. They did not want to go to a place of eternal damnation and destruction, where there is no kingdom of hell. There is no king of hell. There's only hell, and it's hell for each and every spiritual being that goes there. So therefore, we've got to realize one thing. God is in control, and God knows your thoughts, and God knows your steps, and God knows everything about you even before you were born. Even up to this day, He's even got the hairs on your head numbered. But aside from that point, let's get back to the eternal destination question. Where will you go if you die today? If you died this very moment, and there's a heaven and a hell, where do you think you would end up? Would you rather err on the side of saying there is a God and choose His Son and live a life for Him, or would you rather bet on the fact that there is not one and then die and then find out there is one anyway, and then you've lost not only your life, you've lost your soul for eternity? You can't lose if you go with God. God is He's a sure thing, and He's given His Son, Jesus Christ, to make it possible for you to live eternally with Him. He did not create hell for you. He did not create hell for me or anyone else except Satan and his angels. They were in the very presence of God when they rebelled. So therefore, let us just look at this one question and ask yourself this question. Where will I be 1 second after my last heartbeat? Where will I go? What will I do? What would happen if consciousness, the soul remained conscious after death, and then you found yourself standing in front of a God who, instead of being loving, was judgmental and sent you away from His presence? Well, you have a decision to make, my friends, more important than any one that you've ever made in your entire life. So I implore that you give this some thought, because of all these disasters and all these things that are coming on the earth, even with solar storms, that's got Lloyd's of London worried, and all these other things about methane gas exploding, from the ocean floor, and floods and accidents, and all of these other things, starvation from famine because the food supply is going to be diverted to the manufacture of gasoline. Um, All these things could come into play to potentially take your life. And you've got to realize that you are immortal. You're an immortal soul living inside of a mortal body, and this body is going to die one day and return back to dust. So you've got to make sure that you are on the right side of the equation as far as your eternal security is concerned. And if you choose Jesus, you live for Jesus, you repent from your sins, you start living a life that is pleasing to God, and you will go to heaven when you die. You're all set. You're ready. The fix is in. You're good. But if you refuse Jesus Christ and you refuse to accept God's gift of salvation, and you go on and living a life of debauchery and a hedonistic life, a life that is serving idols of things that this world has to offer, then the default decision for not making a decision is hell and damnation forever. So, my friends, please give this some considerable thought and give it some serious thought, because it is the most important decision you'll ever make. This is Dan Beasley. I'm wishing you the best for this Monday, and hope you have a great day. And we're going to have to close our program for today, but I hope you have a good and godly day, and come back to listen with us tomorrow on our next news episode. Thank you, and have a good day.